How long I've worked on this fucking house alone? You know what it's like being a fucking hermit? Fixing a house? There's no Home Depot out here, you fucking assholes. Fucking tomatoes. They fucked my tomatoes up! God damn it! Add that to the fucking list! God damn it! Those are Doms, for Christ's sakes! I grew those from Dom seeds! Fuck! Those are Dom's goddamn seeds, for Christ's sakes! I'm never gonna have a fucking good sauce again! I can't make Dom sauce! Fuck you guys! It's bullshit! Fucking Damon Baird, you're a cock!
Mine. Now that the fate of the franchise is in the hands of a new dev, there were bound to be some changes around here, and after the failure of Judgment, some things were kept in. New enemies, new weapons, new characters, but the same old feeling. So how good it was Gears of War 4's campaign, really, in comparison to its predecessors? Let's find out, shall we? The game seems to go back to its roots after that fucking shit show called Judgment. It brought back almost every single small mechanic from the previous titles, from having 4 weapons to how there's no designated switch weapons button, none of that. But I do miss how there's the orange glow when you throw nades and whatnot, so that's kind of a bummer. In addition to being like the old games, now you can yank enemies out of cover and automatically execute them as well. You can also do that after you vault them over. You can also counter a vault or a yank, but sadly you can't execute afterwards, which is pretty fucking useless on Inconceivable if you don't have a Nasher, since you get insta-killed anyway. There are now these things called wind flares, in which they are these giant stores that also discharge electricity. They cause some weapons to shift their angles a bit, and you can use interactables to your advantage, such as placing cover or clearing out groups of enemies. The only times I was not a fan of it was the Siege Beast section, but I beat this game 3 times and I still have trouble completing it. There are also these running sections in which you have to dodge these small moving bolts of lightning that insta-kill you if you're around them for more than like 2 seconds. Other than those nifty aspects, the wind flare sections are pretty good and short, so they don't really overstay their welcome. It's a pretty neat concept, since I remember reading an interview with the devs explaining something along the lines of, if there's no oil in the world, then there will be catastrophic effects or something like that. It seems as though they tried to apply that same theory over to the world of Sarah after all the emotion was quote-unquote gone after Gears 3, but we'll get to those quotations later. A couple of old weapons returned with a few modifications to them, as well as a couple of new ones as well. The Hammer Burst is back to being a burst weapon like in Gears 1, and the Mark only has 5 bullets and no scope, which I'm fine with. I mean, I don't really care all that much about it. It's a bummer that it doesn't have a scope, but this new one, I dig it. The quote-unquote new weapons are the drop shot, which you can drop explosives over instead of under like the digger. Shot grenades are useful as area denial tools like the ink grenades, and the tri-shot is like a minigun similar to the mulcher. As for the actual new weapons, the M-bar is a railgun that stuns enemies if you do an active reload on it. The Enforcer is an SMG that has severe damage drop off. The Overkill is a 4-barrel shotgun where the spread gets tighter as you hold down the trigger longer, and the Salvo is a rocket launcher, and the Buzzkill ricochets projectiles off the surfaces. Speaking of heavy weapons, you can finally fucking sprint with them. If there's one thing I've always hated about the heavy weapons is that I'm pretty much forced to walk at a snail's pace, even though like I want to like go fast as possible. Like ain't no one want to walk at like 2 miles an hour. It might not sound like much, but it does kill the boredom of having to move at like 2 frames per second with a mulcher. Well, now I can do it at like fucking 7 miles per hour while sprinting. Most of the new enemies are just updated versions of the original trilogy. Trackers are just tickers, juvies are wretches, DR1s are drudges armed with either overkill, salvos, or tri-shots. Hunters are the Therons and the Scions are the boomers. I almost forgot that they did that power-up mode shit where they did this fucking and made all the drones around them stronger. I kind of missed that aspect since I've been playing Gears 5 a lot lately, but I'll get to that eventually. A new enemy faction introduced are the DBs, in which they are just robots such as the ones carrying enforcers. Deadeyes are snipers armed with M-bars. DR1s are these big dudes with overkill, salvos, or tri-shots, and the Guardians are these erratic watchers armed with salvos or tri-shots. I honestly don't find fighting them very interesting since, well, they're robots. All I'm quote-unquote killing is nuts and bolts. It's nowhere near as satisfying as hearing the splat of Locust limbs flying all over the place. Otherwise, I might as well be playing a Terminator game. Oh wait. The only time DBs are even remotely fun to fight against is the Guardians, since they are so different, and that's only because they are just shriekers from Gears 3 with temporary Mauler shields on them. The bosses are actually pretty good this time around, as they offer a nice challenge, but somewhat suffer since they appear more than once, so they lose their uniqueness factor, as they feel like common enemies at that point. The Snatcher either moves at a snail's pace or, as the name implies, when it hits you with its giant quill, it snatches you up, and the only way for you to get out is if your useless teammates shoot the belly enough to where it's forced to spit you out. The carrier shoots these things called cankers into the air and leaves a large AoE effect that insta-kills you, and its weak point is in its exposed chest. They're pretty easy to kill if you have patience, since they're pretty damn slow. The Kestrel, the only DB boss fight, is a giant helicopter bullet sponge in which you have to shoot the engines while simultaneously dodging its insta-kill bullets that shred you instantly and its insta-kill missiles. The Swarmhawk is the best of the 4 since it requires some level of strategy, since you have to use the Transformers and shoot the blisters instead of mindlessly aiming at the twin guns like in 1 and 3. The game unfortunately has these stupid wave defense sections like in Judgment, but they're a little more bearable since it has the Fabricator, which allows you to build defenses such as fences and sentries at a limited cost. There are barely 3 of them, and they're all pretty easy, since the first one is just generally easy. The second one is pretty much Meet the Engineer, the video game, in which you make the sentries do all the work for you. And the third one should be easy if you have the Memento Mori, as the bosses are one-hit kills with that thing. There is a cool motorcycle section and a giant robot section similar to the Brumok at the end of Gears 2, that as you control 2 robots named, ironically, Jack Jr., and the other controlling Second Betty, named after Dizzy's rig. The only issue I have with that part is how the Brumoks on Inconceivable take forever to take down. They're pretty easy, yes, but they're such damn sponges that I just wanted to end as quickly as possible. The final boss in this game is a complete joke in terms of difficulty. It's not Gears 1 ROM's levels of bad, but it's up there. The first section is similar to where the carrier launches its cankers, and then its second phase consists of you dodging its easily reactable quills while shooting its tentacles off. Then the final phase has you use the downed raven's rotor to chop off its legs and jam it into the big boy's big brain. only died once, only because I wasn't paying attention to the cankers at the beginning, and this is on inconceivable difficulty, even harder than the already previous hardest difficulty, insane. I am a little disappointed in how the gore is handled. In the old games, you can see their bones, livers, lungs, intestines, all the guts and glory in action. Now they're just red blobs of meat. I only say a little since the game's overall godlike graphics are more than enough to compensate for this, especially when you have this many polygons displaying on the screen at once. Otherwise, the game might as well be renamed Gears of 4 frames per second. Contrary to what some people might say, I actually like the tone TC is setting graphically. I know people were upset about how, oh, it's not dark and gritty anymore, when in reality the series has gotten more colorful as time progressed. I said this theory in my Gears 3 review as well. I think I'm starting to see a pattern here. Gears 1 is full of dark and gray colors and shadows, and the war at that point wasn't even nearly as won. Gears 2 had slightly more color to them. It was set during a critical point in the war, and now with Gears 3, it is full of colors, full of life, and it is set at the near end of the war, as if the rain finally stopped after all this time. Of course, there's the fact that the game is running on Unreal Engine 4, but also keep in mind that the humans have endured peace and prosperity over the last 25 years, so the tone here is going to have full of life and color. That is until roughly Act 3 where it somewhat changes. The blacks and pinks stemming from the pods have become more and more prominent as the game progresses, so it still retains its grittiness from the old games in terms of its graphics. There are some graphical imperfections, but I'm not too hung over them. One glaring issue I noticed is how even on the Xbox One version there are some frame drops when there's a lot of swarm pods on the screen at once. Only noticed it maybe 4 or 5 times, but it's not a big issue. And now, on to the story.
You know how this little guy starts out?
Trying to stay alive.
True. But if it survives, and most don't, it finds a way to change. The little larva becomes a chrysalis. Inside, it destroys and rebuilds itself, changing its color, its shape. It gets wings, claws. It slashes its way out of its cage, and then it's new and beautiful.
Well, if that isn't a bizarre way of foreshadowing, I don't know what is. Set 25 years after Gears 3, the story tells the tale of James Dominic Fenix, a former COG lieutenant who went AWOL from the COG to be an outsider, which people who are against the COG. Dell, his best friend, and Kate, whoever this bitch is, embark a journey to fight an endless wave of DBs. Then Kate's mom gets taken away by a mysterious new enemy called the Swarm and plan on getting her back. We also get a failed comic relief character named Oscar and a new COG chairman named Jin, who seems to have getting a wrecked problem and accused Jin of taking her people without any proof, which is fucking annoying as hell. The story is alright, I suppose. It's not bad, but it's not good either. Kind of like Judgment. The prologue serves as a nice summary of the series so far to newcomers and fan service to veterans like myself. However, we could have had a quick recap of the first 3 games narrated by Marcus or something in a short video of some sort instead of spending 15 to 20 minutes playing through this. It's a real shame too, because I'm quite sure a few people have been waiting for Pendulum Wars game for who knows how long. Considering how much of a letdown Judgment was, it would have made sense if it was like a story DLC or... Oh, I almost forgot about that. Anyway, the first 2 acts serves as who the trio are as people. The main trio is seen trying to raid a COG settlement. Oh boy, I can easily tell that this game's story is aimed towards newer players and it shows, but I'll get to that when we talk about the Swarm. As for these three, I honestly cannot describe them very easily since they're all the same boring blank sheets of paper, similar to Gears 1 Dom. Though I do like JD the most since I can relate to him on a certain level as having a dead mom and a slight dislike for my own dad. He also seems to rely on his own intuition way more than he should be doing. JD could have easily hurt or even killed himself and his friends many times in the story, but didn't due to plot inconvenience. We'll see how much that aspect bites him in the ass when we get to Gears 5 later on. As for the other two, Dell is just there, I guess, and Kate is the same except her only purpose is to set up the story for Gears 5 and whine about
Again! I thought we were looking for a mine!
the humor is a mixed bag for me. The great thing about it is how the jokes go either rapid fast or somewhat longer than you need to, but not Family Guy cutaway gags long. If you don't like this joke, you don't have to suffer through an eternity of hearing it.
Best thing my mother did was raise me away from all this.
Yeah, well, to be fair, we do need to repopulate.
Oh yeah? Where do I sign up?
Ew.
I got something for their suggestion box. Worst museum ever.
So, who's going in first?
Hey, JD. I've rock, paper, scissors you for it.
Seriously? You're terrible at rock, paper, scissors.
How can someone be terrible at rock, paper, scissors?
Easily, because you always pick paper.
Do I?
Let's do it.
Damn it.
Can we not do rock, paper, scissors this time?
Or as Dell likes to call it, paper, paper, paper.
Funny. Very funny.
Oh, well, that's over. I'm sure that's not the last of them.
Then let's lay down more fortifications. Make things as suboptimal for them as possible.
Wow. You keep talking like that, Jen might make you a second lieutenant.
Oh, really? Because I'd rather die in a fire.
Hey, the way things are going, you might just get your wish.
Well, the good news is they're dead. The bad news, I kind of wrecked the loader. Great. Out of the storm and into the swarm.
Really?
Like really, the saving grace is the legend himself, Marcus Fenix. His badassery is still intact and his commentary is unintentionally hilarious as usual.
Guys?
Thought you said you weren't running from the cog.
Yeah, that wasn't completely accurate.
God damn it, James.
Okay, I gotta know. Do you think the Locusts are back?
Don't know yet. That's the one nice thing about being old. You don't have to have an opinion about everything.
The loader's hit! Oh, shit! Take out that snatcher!
That what?
The snatcher! It's what we... forget it. Just shoot the goddamn thing!
Okay, James. This ore transporter. What kind of shape is it in?
On fire?
On fire.
Dad, I got this.
Okay, so what did happen to Jen's bot?
I think that Pouncer's quills hacked into it somehow.
How would that work?
A bioelectric field, maybe?
Or some kind of voltage-gated ion channel.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense.
It does. Better load up on ammo while we can.
Oh, you think we'll need it?
Yeah, Del. Unless your Lancer runs on smartass.
Seems to be working so far.
We also get a Carmine though, but he only appears at one measly part. We didn't even know his name until TC put him into a fucking loot box a month later after the game's release. He didn't even have not one line of dialogue. Nothing. Just a mere cameo. I don't really have an issue with it, but he would be a way better replacement over Oscar since he was honestly not that memorable. In each game we bonded with each Carmine, no matter how minuscule it is. At least him being involved in the raid instead of Oscar, his death will have a more will have more of an impact since, well, the player has bonded with him and he too is cursed with having the scheduled date with the Reaper like his uncle's. His death just seems more like a background character's death instead of something of meaning like the rest of his family. A pure slap in the face to us Carmine fans, really. The Swarm is... they're alright, I guess, but nowhere near as cool as the Locust, mainly due to their design, introduction, and trade sword. Lack thereof. For starters, they look like flesh instead of creatures with pinks and whites. It's creepy but not menacing like the Locusts were. They don't look as cool either. They look like giant thumbs that has the skin peeled off than actual monsters. The only ones I did like were the Sniper, Drone Elite, and Imago, only because... Good grief, he's naked! I'm kind of indifferent about the Scions, mostly because the crystal on the speaker's hand was a dead giveaway that the Locusts were back. Solely because I can't name not one thing that represents yellow in the Gears universe besides emulsion. My main issue with the Swarm is that they aren't really that memorable. Why? Well, look at the main villain's introductory scenes.
Our strategy remains the same. Cut off the head of the snake, and the body dies. We will win this war. It's only a matter of time.
No, we're here for Alpha and the Resonator. Come on!
It's him! Alert the fleet! I want every outpost between here and Azura at full readiness. And make sure we don't lose him again.
God damn it, she's still alive? How the hell did she survive the flood?
So, she's still running the show.
Oh, shit! Look at the size of that bug!
I got your number, bitch.
Guys, that sounded like there were dozens of them. Hundreds, like a swarm.
You see the problem here? No? Well, let me explain it to you. With the previous 4 villains, how much of a threat they are and how much of a danger they pose to the protagonist hits the player way harder emotionally than the Swarm ever did. All we get during the Swarm sequence is a quick shots of this thing and this enormous creature. Rom was leading an ambush on Delta Squad and killed Min. Scourge led an assault on Wandown and then cut open a fucking tank with a jeweled chainsaw staff. Queen Mira was seen commanding what's left of her Locust subjects on a giant bug thing to follow Marcus everywhere he goes, and Karn was seen leading a massive trail of the most elite of COG soldiers on this giant bug thing. What makes their introductory scenes work so well, and not the swarms, is how the protagonists physically experience how much of a threat they posed. Both Marcus and Baird witness how dangerous these Locust generals are, and this feeling is then transferred over to the player since we're obviously playing as them. So we're immersed to these characters. I'm like, wow, this is really what I'm up against. The same cannot be said for the introduction of the Swarm. The trio does not physically experience how dangerous the Swarm really is, since they are not directly confronting them. I felt almost nothing since I have no idea what these creatures are besides this giant pink thing and various silhouettes of the speaker. The only emotions of the protagonist being felt is Kate's mom being taken away, and that was it. They're just standing around being locked away after being told by Reyna to
"You need to hide, and then you need to run."
Therefore, this empty feeling transfers over to the player and just makes the Swarm feel just bland and boring. To make matters even worse, they don't even have a real strategy in mind. They just serve as mere cannon fodder to prevent the trio from accessing the main hive. The Locust in Gears 1 kidnapped a COG soldier and used his radio to track down Delta Squad's position at all times. The Locust used the Riftworm to poke holes around Jacinto to make the city even more vulnerable than it already is. In Gears 3, Mira commanded her Locust subjects on Reavers to hold every outpost from where Marcus' position was all the way to Azura. Here, we have thousands of these pods just lying around, and Juvies hatch out of these said pods. They then dig themselves a nice little nest, transform to Imagos, and shoot anything that looks human. That is honestly the extent of their strategy I can think of. If so, it's no wonder why the trio, with zero war experience, plowed through them so easily. I think the writers are trying to give the Swarm a "what the fuck are these things" type of tone. However, the Locusts in Gears 1 were both mysterious and intelligent, which makes them even more scary, since what's more fearful? A brain-dead zombie or an intelligent one? That being said, there honestly should have been scenes of the Swarm at the bare minimum just watching them, playing an ambush like a sniper, putting a scope on all of them, since they all seem to do is just stand around vibing all day, all night long, doing nothing. It's honestly pretty sad because they had so much damn potential, but the writers tried too hard to invoke a mysterious aura around them and not enough of how much of a danger they are to the trio. Really, the Locusts, or Scions they're called now, are the ones pulling the strings, and the Swarm feel like generic foot soldiers. Speaking of the Locust, the Speaker's role had so much potential as well. His role could have been similar to Rom, where he was watching everything Delta was doing behind the scenes, but it seems as though the Speaker was more of a background character, since he only made like 2 appearances in the entire story. Literally anyone who has paid attention to the story of Gears 3 knows that yellow is mostly associated with Emulsion. So by showing his gray hand filled with yellow crystals, it's a dead giveaway that the Locusts are back, and hiding his face is even more pointless now that I think about it. I guarantee you, the only people who don't know this right away are people who haven't played the original. That's where I think the sole reason for the lack of face reveal during his debut cutscene. His initial scene should have played out similar to Rom, where he's commanding various swarm drones left and right, and then fight Reyna. That would have been way more effective as a mystery factor, since newer players will be wondering who the fuck this big ass dude is, and veterans will be in shock as to how the Locust returned after so long, where they got these mysterious creatures from. The director of these scenes could have let him at least one more scene where he is listening in on one of their convos of Marcus or Reyna back. Then have him speak to the swarm and command them to stop the trio. Even better if they show him putting bandages on his chopped arm, since it will give us the impression that they're also scavengers rather than just pillagers. They don't even have to show his face either, since the scene can work perfectly well without it. Especially when we have yet to see a Locust speak in complete sentences like this.
She is where she belongs.
Kate, don't listen to it.
Tell me where my mother is!
The path to your mother lies through me.
That way, his face reveal even more of a surprise factor. His role will be similar to Rom's, in which they're both watching subtly from the shadows. Unoriginal? Maybe, but the speaker's death will be a lot more compelling, since it will give him and his death way more significance in the story than the original ever did. It'll give off the satisfaction of, wow, I killed a Locust of much importance. Their leadership must be crumbled, like how we killed Rom in Gears 1. So what we've got here is a group of boring protagonists combined with an underwhelming villain. And this is exactly why Gears of War 4's campaign was so disappointing. The mere fact that it was going back to its roots was promising, and some of the new weapons like the M-Bar and mechanics such as wind flares were actually pretty cool. But the story and characters were so damn lackluster, especially when you consider that the cliffhanger means we have to deal with these bland ass characters and these boring as fuck villains again and again. We'll see if that changes when we get to Gears of War 5. Oh, I'm sorry, Gears 5. Oh dear.